afternoon session?
Yes, ma'am.
You may call your next witness.
The defense calls Valerie Mallory.
Ma'am, if you would step over here for me, please. Stand right here. Face the clerk, raise your right hand, sir, and take the oath.
You do solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
And now, ma'am, if you would have a seat in a red chair, speaking a loud and clear voice for the court, would you move up close to that mic?
Good afternoon, Ms. Mallory.
Hi there. This mic.
Yep, that's the one. Talk right into that, please, and start out by telling us your name.
Valerie Mallory,
Spell the last name for us.
Mallory.
How are you employed,
I work at Lake Magdalene United Methodist Church.
and where is that church?
It's in Tampa, North Tampa, at Fletcher.
How long have you worked there?
12 years.
And tell me, I don't need to know your duties, but in other words, where are you located? What's your
I'm
initial
the
job?
front office. I'm the calendar secretary and receptionist, and oversee the food pantry that we have and stuff.
All right. Were you working there back on January 7th of 2015?
Yes.
Did you have a chance to come in contact with a person you later learned to be John Jonchuck Jr.?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
You can point to him, please. Tell us what he's wearing.
Blue dress shirt with a striped tie.
All right. Does he look different today than he did when you saw him in January 7th of 2015?
Yes.
How does he look different?
Hair is shorter and a lot of weight loss.
Okay. Did Mr. Jonchuck, come into your church on January 7th?
Yes, he did.
Do you have video cameras at your church?
We do, but none up in my office that would, show him and me conversing. We do have some outdoor cameras. They have been since updated because they were old at the time, and we didn't have a lot of them throughout the church.
Okay, so you have cameras, back then in 2015, you had cameras outside but nothing inside.
Correct.
Okay. When Mr. Jonchuck came into the church, was he carrying anything?
A large book, which was a Bible.
Okay. And what did he do with it?
He sat it on the counter in front of me.
Did he tell you what it was, or?
He told me it was a Swedish Bible. That's pretty much it, is regarding the book.
And give us an idea about how big it was.
Approximately maybe 8.5 by 14, about 5 inches thick, roughly.
Look new or old?
Very old.
In addition to telling you it was a Swedish Bible, did he tell you anything else?
He stated that he had been to his attorney's office and asked her to translate. I don't know if she's Swedish or she just spoke the language. And then he started saying that he had just found out that he was related to the Pope.
That Mr. Jonchuck said that he
Mr. Jonchuck, yes.
said he was related
to the Pope.
Okay. Did he tell you when he learned that?
No.
Did he tell you who told him that?
No.
Was Phoebe with him at the time?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Did you give Phoebe anything?
A lollipop.
So, tell me a little bit about this interaction with him. Are we talking about a back and forth conversation, or what's going on?
Not really. I mean, it really wasn't like a conversation. He just repeated several times about being related to the Pope, and he just seemed agitated, but not like, I never felt threatened or anything, with him being there and what he was saying.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. You used the term agitated, and that's a good word, but now agitated as opposed to what was he not? He was agitated, but he wasn't?
Well, I mean, just his body movements, he was just uneasy, and just, like I said, kept repeating that he was related to the Pope, and I really didn't have much to say back to him. I was just nodding my head.
Was he angry?
No. Mm-mm.
Was he confrontational?
No.
Did he say why he was there?
No.
Did he ask to talk to a pastor or a priest or a reverend or anything?
No, he did not.
What was he wearing?
Red plaid pajama pants. I cannot remember his top. It was long sleeves. It was in January, so it was quite chilly out. His hair was messed up, but that's pretty much.
What, you said pajama pants. Was this in the morning?
No, it was early afternoon, like around 1-ish, 1 o'clock.
And you said that he was with a young girl?
He was with Phoebe.
Was anyone else with him?
Yes, there was another lady that came in with him. She didn't say anything. She sat on the sofa. She had her hair pulled back with glasses on, and later finding out that was his stepmom.
Did she talk to you at all?
No.
Did she talk to Mr. Jonchuck at all?
No.
Judge, if I could have a moment.
Sure.
Going back to when Mr. Jonchuck came into the reception area, when he walked in, was he demanding to be baptized?
No.
Did you ever have a chance to talk to any police officers who were investigating this case?
The detective, shortly after the incident happened, I was contacted by a detective, and then he also came. We had Phoebe's funeral at our church to help the family out and so forth, and he came to the church as well for that.
Okay. When he talked to you, did he ask you about the video cameras?
Yes, he brought a thumb drive with him, and myself and another coworker went into the room where we have the camera equipment and stuff, and we downloaded what we had. Wasn't really a whole lot.
Okay. And you did that, you told him about the cameras that you had them?
Yes.
Okay.
He asked when he called me initially, and I told him that we did have some out there.
And did you tell him that John had demanded to be baptized when he came in?
I believe so.
So you think you told Detective Miller that John did demand to be baptized?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's been a little while. I can't remember my conversation too much with the officer, but I believe I did tell him that.
Okay. And now, looking back on it now, do you remember whether he demanded to be baptized or not?
He did not demand to be baptized.
How long do you think he was there?
About 15 minutes.
Did you call anyone to have him escorted from the property or anything?
No?
Were you concerned about that?
No?
How did, you told us how he came in, how it started, how did it end?
He just stopped talking and grabbed the Bible, turned around and walked out the door, and his stepmom got up with Phoebe and they followed him.
That's all you have to.
Cross.
You learned Phoebe's name after this all occurred?
Yes.
Phoebe seemed happy and okay?
I'm sorry, say again?
Did Phoebe seem happy and okay?
Very much.
Did the stepmother seem concerned about anything?
No.
Were you concerned about anything?
No.
Nothing further, Judge.
Anything further, Mr. Williams?
Nothing for you, Judge.
Okay. Can Ms. Mallory be excused, or do you want her on standby?
She can be excused from our point of view, Judge.
Questions? Anybody have any questions of Ms. Mallory? Okay.
We have an additional question, Judge.
Okay.
Did he appear fixated on the Pope?
Objection beyond the scope of my cross, Judge.
Overruled.
Did he appear to be fixated on the Pope?
Yes. He said that several times.
He said that, sir?
He said that he was related to the Pope several times.
When you looked at him, did he appear to be odd? Did there appear to be something wrong?
Judge, again, objected beyond my scope of my cross.
I know. Go ahead.
I mean, I could tell that he was a little off. He wasn't, I figured he had not taken his medication. He just, if somebody comes in and says that you're...
Speculation, Judge.
Sustained.
You can answer the question, but don't talk about what you suspected. Tell us what you saw.
Okay. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. When you saw him and were talking to him, did he appear to be off or out of it, or whatever word you want to use?
Yes, he did.
No further questions, sir.
Anything further, Mr. Mallory? So, this witness, Ms. Mallory can be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Mallory.
Thank you, Judge.
And you're excused.
Okay.
You may call your next witness.
Judge, the defense calls Dr. Jose Hernandez.
Sir, if you would step over here for me, please. And sir, you stand right here. Face this way, raise your right hand, prepare to take the oath.
You do solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. All right, sir, if you would, have a seat in this red chair for me.
Good afternoon, Dr. Hernandez.
Make sure you speak in a loud and clear voice and move up close to the mic, all right? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Doctor. If you would please turn and introduce yourself to the jury and go ahead and spell your last name for the court reporter.
Yeah, my name is Jose Hernandez. I'm a psychiatrist at the Pinellas County Jail.
And that was going to be my next question. What do you do for work? But how long have you been at the Pinellas County Jail?
I have been working in there for about 8 years.
Okay. Were you subpoenaed to testify today?
Yes.
Is either side paying you any money to be here today?
No.
Okay. Correct in that you are not forming an opinion or providing an opinion to the jury regarding Mr. Jonchuck's insanity at the time of offense, correct?
Not at all.
Okay. Were you the treating psychiatrist at Pinellas County Jail when Mr. Jonchuck was arrested in January of 2015?
Correct.
Okay. What is your educational background in order to become a psychiatrist?
I went to the medical school, and after from a foreign country, I came to the United States. I passed all the license required for the United States. And I did my training as psychiatrist at Harlan Hospital, New York. And then I did a fellowship in forensic and child and adolescent psychiatry.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part?
I did a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatrist.
Child and adolescent psychiatry?
Correct.
And that was a 2-year fellowship, is that right?
Yes.
And how long is residency?
Altogether, 5 years.
Okay. How long have you worked as a psychiatrist?
About 20 years.
Are you licensed to practice psychiatry in Florida?
Yes.
Any other states?
Florida only.
Okay. If you could explain a little bit what your job is over at the jail next door.
Yes. I'm the treating psychiatrist, and I also, at the same time, oversee the mental health department, Pinellas County Jail. Basically, when any patient get admitted to the hospital, if they need site treatment, we do the evaluation for them, and if they need medication, we start them on medication. We also make sure that they are safe, and there's a lot of suicidality in jail and prison, so part of my job is to make sure.
Doctor, I'm having trouble hearing, even understanding, and I think maybe, is everybody understand? Not so
No?
much.
Okay.
Why don't you start again?
Okay.
Because you got a heavy accent.
I know.
So, and speak a little slower and a little more succinctly, because everybody's got to understand it.
All right.
All right, can you
That's
start
Can you
again?
move the mic down to, just so I can watch your mouth, actually? Thank you.
Down?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Along those lines, let's back up. You did not do your residency in Harlem, correct? Or in Holland, correct?
I did it at Harlem Hospital.
Harlem, New York, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you could maybe start over and just explain to the jury your role, your job duty as the psychiatrist over at the jail.
Okay. Sorry about it. I'm going to try my best. Like I said before, I'm the treating psychiatrist at the jail, and at the same time, I oversee the mental health department. We are a team of 8 professionals in mental health, and we work together. My job is to make sure that patients who have mental illness get the appropriate treatment when they get to jail, and also to make sure that they are safe. A lot of patients that get in jail, they do trying to hurt themselves, and that's part of my job to make sure that doesn't happen to them.
And so when somebody gets arrested, there's some kind of classification process that's done to determine where to house them? Is that right?
Yes.
Are all of the patients or inmates that you deal with in a specific location in the jail?
Mostly in the medical building.
Okay.
Yes. Most of all the patients that come to jail, they go through booking. It's a process. They get screened by the nurses, and they do pertinent questions about mental illness. And they if the patient score like high, like in terms of feeling depressed or feeling suicidal, or any issues of that kind, they get placed in sometimes single cells, just to make sure that we observe them better.
And the staff that you oversee, generally who is included in that staff? Not their names, but what kind of job duties and backgrounds do they have?
Right. There are 2 nurse practitioners, ARNP, advanced nurse practitioner, and social workers, 5 of them.
5 of them, you said?
Yes.
You are in charge of the psychiatric team over at the jail, right?
Yes.
Am I correct in that there is a different medical doctor that is in charge of the just general medical team?
Right. There is a medical director in the jail.
Okay.
His name is Dr. Kyle.
As a psychiatrist, though, you are a medical doctor, correct?
Yes.
And are you able to prescribe medications?
Correct.
Okay. How often do you meet with a patient, an inmate at the jail?
It depends. If we have the patient on suicidal watch, most of the time it could be every day, or it depends on whether one of my staff see the patient every day. Not necessarily.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I said not necessarily myself, but one of us see the patient every day.
Okay. If they're on suicide watch, someone's going to see
Yes.
them every day?
Correct.
Gotcha. And as far as making diagnoses, is your purpose in diagnosing somebody for the sole basis of trying to treat that person?
Yes.
Okay. Do you rely on your staff's notes in forming a treatment plan?
Well, I mean, they are professional, but in terms of like prescribed medication, we have to see the patient, physically.
Right. But like, let's say if you're not there, you're on the weekends, you're usually off, right?
Right.
So on Monday when you go in, is it regular or customary for you to kind of review the different notes that have been input while you were away?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. Have you had the opportunity to treat Mr. Jonchuck since January of 2015?
I tried to give medication to him, but he denies. I mean, he refused it. So he never wanted to take any medication from us.
Okay. And that was, when was that? That he didn't want to take any medication?
Since he got arrested at the beginning, 2015.
And am I correct in that he was in jail from January 8th, 2015 to...
sent to North Florida Hospital to get competency. Normally they come back and stay here, that's never brought up. But because he had to go back a second time, everyone agreed that it was best to keep him up there so that we wouldn't have any more issues. So he spent all that time in North Florida Hospital, which doesn't normally occur. He would have normally been spending time in the Pinellas County Jail. It's highly prejudicial for the jurors to think that he spent all those years in a mental hospital that houses the quote-unquote criminally insane. That's going to, that prejudicial effect upon the state refers to the jury that he is in fact insane, and that's why he was sent there in the first place. They're not to try to differentiate him between competency and insanity is not appropriate in this particular type of situation. It was agreed that the competency doctors weren't coming in and testifying in this particular situation because it wouldn't be appropriate for them to come in and testify that he was competent and competent and competent. It's insanity. This doctor I believe, should have been only called to say that he believed when he saw the defendant shortly after the crime, he formed whatever opinions he had psychiatrically. For this, now to testify that he's come back, I've seen him, he's still got this issue, that issue. At some point after the murder, it becomes irrelevant what his mental status is. And I would argue that that's a short time afterwards. Beforehand, what built up to that, they want to argue that he had seen a psychiatrist at 5, he's seen a psychiatrist at 21. We're not objecting to that because that may be building up to the time of the murder. And maybe shortly afterwards, his observations may be relevant. But months, years later are not relevant to not guilty by reason of insanity. We're looking for that small particular point of view. So I don't believe that he should be able to testify to that. I don't think, and if you're going to allow him to testify those kind of things, I don't think the fact that he was at the North Florida Treatment Center where they house mentally ill patients should come out either. And why he was there. I think all of that is irrelevant to the issue at hand. It's prejudicial to the state under 402 and 403, which applies to the state's side as well, that the probative values, the prejudicial probative value does not outweigh all the prejudicial effect upon the state's case. I think that they can accomplish what they want to, but to go into when he went up there, when he came back, he didn't compensate it, he went up there again, he came back, those kind of things, I don't think are appropriate, Judge. He can make that he wanted to give him meds, he can explain why he wanted to give him meds. But to go on for, he was here for months, then he was found incompetent, then we sent him to the hospital for months, he came back, he compensated, he went back to the hospital for years. That has such a prejudicial effect upon the issue of sanity that's unfair to the state.
Okay. I'm going to respond to Mr. Ellis, and then if you need to respond, you can. Okay. Shorten this up. Okay, I agree with you on the court order. I think to tell the jury that some judge found him incompetent to stand trial, I don't think they're going to understand what that means. So that's not going to happen. As far as at Florida State Hospital, you can cross-examine anybody you want to establish, as you put, that he wasn't there because he was criminally insane. He was there because he refused his medication at the county jail. That's why he was there. We all know that that's why he was there. And you can cross-examine all you want to establish that he wasn't there because he was criminally insane. He was there because he refused his medication. The history of mental illness, the severity of, or lack thereof, of his mental illness, the resistance to treatment, the difference between him medicated and not medicated is highly relevant to the decision this jury's going to have to make. So I'm not going to exclude that testimony, and you're talking about years later. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but I think the status of someone's mental health after the time in question is highly relevant to what they were experiencing at the time. What medications helped? What didn't? What were they diagnosed with? Did it make a difference? It's highly relevant to determining whether he suffered from whatever he suffered from. So I'm not going to limit them. I don't know. I don't think they should talk about competency and incompetency because the jury's not going to understand what that is. but I don't think the jury should be misled and think that he was at the Florida hospital because he was criminally insane. I think the state would want the jury to know that he was there because, not that he was criminally insane, or not that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, but because he wasn't competent, and have that explained, and the difference between the two, because they're dramatically different. I don't know how to avoid it. You can't give this jury half a picture. That's not really fair to anybody. So they're like, okay, he was back and forth, and what does that mean? Or just not do it at all. It doesn't give them a full picture of his mental health, and they need a full picture to make a decision. So, no. Did you want to address anything?
No, I don't think so.
And I understand, maybe, so you're saying the status of his mental health today as he sits here doesn't have anything to do with whether he was legally insane at the time?
Yes.
Okay, I respectfully disagree. Okay, let's bring the jury in, please.
Before we do that, Judge, could we ask that at some point the defense instruct their witnesses from the state hospital on your Honor's ruling that he just made so that they don't inadvertently blurt out he was there because he was found incompetent by a judge or anything contrary to what?
I don't think that's a big deal, but if you want to, sure.
Well, I guess the issue, I thought you guys are going to bring that out on cross right now.
No, we have to about the competency ordered by the judge.
No, that's not coming
I
up.
want their witnesses to be instructed on that. That's what
Okay.
I'm referring to.
All right.
Deputy Rose, fine, I'm
So,
gonna bring him in.
Dr. Hernandez, make sure you don't say anything about a competency order from court. You could say you went back and forth. And if you're asked further questions on that and it's admissible, you can answer it, but don't talk about
No, as I said, I'm not a forensic, I'm just a trained psychiatrist. I don't have
Okay.
Judge, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you said.
He said
I
he's
said-
not going to do that because he's a treating psychiatrist and not a forensic psychiatrist in this case.
Okay.
Judge, the only one thing I wanted to clarify, the court had made a comment that Mr. Jonchuck was only at the hospital because he refused meds.
Well, I think for a time that's why he was, because he had to get medicated because every time he came here he was incompetent.
Okay, but I think if the court's going to allow him to say he was only there because he was refused meds, and that would certainly, no, he wasn't. He was there originally for competency and deteriorated when he was back in the jail.
The jury can get the complete picture of what happened.
Okay,
I don't know what more I can say.
all right.
We're ready.
All right. Four.
You need some water or anything?
I'm fine, thank you. Yes.
There isn't a jury box and seat here.
Dr. Hernandez, I'm sorry. I think I was asking you, when you first observed Mr. Jonchuck, it was when he was in the county jail from January to March of 2015, correct?
Yes.
Okay. During that time period, were you able, well, let me back up a little bit. Is that one of the times you're talking about when you said that you tried to give him medication, but he never wanted?
Correct.
Okay. So when he first came in?
Yes.
Okay. Today, is Mr. Jonchuck taking his medication?
Yes.
Has he been compliant with his medication since he came back to the Pinellas County Jail in March of this year?
He is.
Okay. Have you noticed a change in Mr. Jonchuck from when you saw him in January 2015 to when you visit with him now?
Definitely, yes.
Okay. When you first made contact with him, what date was that?
Lately? You mean?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure. You can refresh your record. I'm sorry. You said?
When he came back lately?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. On January 8th, 2015, you met with him actually that first day, January 8th of 2015, right?
Yes.
Okay. And was that in the evening time?
Yes.
Okay. 5 sound about right?
Around that time.
Okay. At that time, what was his demeanor, appearance, state? How was he?
As far as I recall at that time, when I met him the first time, he was very unpredictable and showing very disorganized behavior. I remember he was supposed to go to court that day, and he was refusing. So I came to see him. When he saw me, he came to the door and got very fascinated with my ring. And so he said, it was a beautiful ring that I have. So
Let me stop you real quick. So if I understand you correctly, you were saying Mr. Jonchuck was supposed to be going over to court but was refusing to go to court.
yes.
Would you agree that he was being uncooperative?
Judge, objection, leading.
Sustained.
Okay. Was his behavior when he saw you in your ring, did his behavior change?
Yes, when he saw me, it looked like he knew me or something like that. He came to the cell door and trying to talk to me.
Had you ever met Mr. Jonchuck before?
No, never.
Okay. Did he make some unusual statements to you that first time you saw him?
He did. I asked him about what his name was, and he said he's John the Baptist, but his given name was John Chuck.
So he said, my name is John the Baptist, even my given name was Jonchuck, or
Yes.
is that right? Did any of his paperwork indicate that he was John the Baptist?
No.
Okay. Did he seem paranoid when you first met with him?
He did. He looked very paranoid, very erratic, and really like not making any sense.
Was there ever a time from January of 2015 to when he left in March of 2015 that his behavior improved? Like he wasn't paranoid or he wasn't erratic?
He did not improve.
He did not improve.
No.
Was he taking, that was during the time that he was not taking any psychiatric medication, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Were there some problems with him even taking his blood pressure medication?
He was refusing it.
Okay, so he was refusing that medication as well?
Yes.
Okay. What is psychosis? Or psychotic symptoms?
Psychosis is a mental disorder where the patient they lose touch with reality.
You said they lose touch with reality?
Correct.
Okay, just clarifying. Continue. Or is there, what are some examples?
An example is like your patient's complaining or hearing things when nobody's there, or seeing things when nobody's there. Sometimes they complain of having command hallucinations, like somebody's telling them to do something.
What kind of hallucinations?
But that's called command type.
Command?
Yeah. So they complain that somebody's telling them to, to whatever, kill somebody or to jump or to go somewhere, but nobody's there. So it's not, it's not real.
What about disorganized thinking? Is that an example?
The disorganized thinking is not coherent. They are not coherent. They are, they doesn't make no sense.
Did you observe that in Mr. Jonchuck?
Based on the, the first encounter, he came to introduce himself and says John the Baptist, that kind of statement like that. It came out of nowhere because we were not talking about, like religion or nothing like that. So, and I did remember that if I asked if he knew why he was arrested, he said why. He told me why.
And what did he tell you?
When I was reviewing my record, he said he was there because he killed his daughter.
And did you ask a follow-up question to that?
I asked him why he did that.
And what was his answer?
And he answered he was impotent.
Impotent.
Right.
And that's the same conversation he also told you he was John the Baptist.
Right. That's the first encounter.
I'm sorry?
That was the first time that I met him.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you did you find it unusual that how he answered that question?
I did.
In what way?
Most of the people, by my experience, the patients that do that kind of crimes, they usually don't want to talk about it. They avoid the conversation. Or why did they say that they don't know why they got arrested? So I found it unusual that he kind of volunteered to tell me exactly what he did.
And was that the only time that you had conversation with him about the allegations in the case?
After that, he became totally uncooperative. He never wanted to talk to me anymore.
Okay, so you said he didn't talk to you much anymore after that?
Right.
Okay. At some point, would you agree that the entire time he was there, the first few months, he pretty much did not want to communicate with you?
He did not, yes.
Okay. Since Mr. Jonchuck has been back since March of this year, has he communicated with you?
He has.
Okay. is he cooperative when you ask him questions?
Yes, he's a totally different person now.
Totally different person. At some point, in 2016, March to April, was Mr. Jonchuck back in the county jail for about a month?
Yes.
Okay. During that time period, did he want to communicate with you much?
No, not at all. He was showing the same behavior previously, before going to the state hospital.
Was he the whole time, or when he's here for about a month? Was his behavior any different when he first came back that month as to like a week or so into that month?
Almost the same.
Okay. And the medication that so when he first leaves, he comes back to jail. Does he have a list of medication that he's being prescribed?
Yes.
Do you recall what those medications were?
At that time or now?
At the time.
At the time, I don't recall exactly.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you remember Mr. Jonchuck being prescribed Haldol?
I don't.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at the records from that time period? May I approach the witness, Judge?
Yes.
if you wouldn't mind, just take a look, see if that refreshes your recollection about what he was prescribed in March of 2016.
This is the medication at that time?
I'm sorry?
Those medication in here listed, that's the one that on 2016?
If there's a date on there.
It doesn't show the date.
They might probably got a
Oh,
lot
here
more
it is.
now.
Yeah, he was at the time. He was on, you want me to tell the medication he was taking?
Well, what medication was he on when he came back?
Yeah. He was on bupropion, which is an antidepressant. He was on quetiapine, which is antipsychotic medication.
What did you say again?
Quetiapine.
Thank you.
He was on haloperidol, which is another antipsychotic medication. And he was taking ibuprofen, like Advil, for pain. And that's what he was taking at that time.
Okay. Well, hold on one second. What you read off was the self-reported medications. Is that correct?
I was reading what he's saying.
That's the self-reported. Is this what the jail was diagnosing and giving him?
This one basically is for medical. There is nothing for psych in here.
There's not a what, did you say?
That's what for the medical medication, like for constipation, things like that.
Okay.
He was taking, but the medical put it separately from the psych.
Right. I'm sorry. This one is the one. But the one that you read the self-reported.
Right.
Okay. As far as what the jail was prescribing him, what is that? Is this the ones that the jail's prescribing?
No. When the patient comes through booking, they say the medication they are taking, but we also get the verification from the Florida State Hospital.
Right.
It's not only they say, "Oh, I'm taking this." We verify too. So,
Right. So I'm asking you though, what was actually being given to him at the jail, not what he reported he was taking at the hospital.
I don't have that proof in here.
Is this not it right here?
Those one only for medical.
I'm sorry, next page.
Let me see. Oh, it is. He was taking benztropine, which is a medication we usually use to prevent the side effects of the antipsychotics.
Okay.
He was taking a cyclovir. This is a medication for any virus,
A virus?
herpes, something like that.
Okay.
And he was taking clonazepam, which is a benzo. It's for anxiety and sometimes for patients who are extremely agitated, we give it to them for that too. And a medication for high blood pressure is called Loprezol and gabapentin. That's medication for anxiety and for pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when he came in March of 2016, the jail was not administering him Haldol. Is that correct?
Whatever medication the patient come with, we give it to them. I don't know if that was not specified in here, but I found the strain that he was on benztropine. I'm sure he was an anti.
What was that?
Benztropine, that's the medication.
Can you spell it just for the court reporter?
V as in Victor, E N Z T R O P I N E. Benztropine or Coyentin, we call that.
Cogentin.
Coyentin.
That's the one that's to treat the side effects of the antipsychotic medication.
It's the same. It's same medication, basically. Yeah. So
You were saying something about that.
I'm sure that if he was on Coyentin or benztropine, I'm sure he was an antipsychotic too.
Do you see an antipsychotic listed in the records that he was being prescribed?
I don't see any listed in here, no.
Okay. In 2016, Mr. Jonchuck was just in the jail for about a month, a little over a month. Is that right?
I remember, yeah.
Okay. And then he was back at the Evaluation and Treatment Center, right?
Correct.
Okay. Until he came down for trial, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you, going back to when Mr. Jonchuck first came in January of 2015, did you believe Mr. Jonchuck to be experiencing psychosis?
I believe so.
Okay. Any doubt in your mind?
No doubt about it.
Okay. And ultimately, you render a diagnosis for Mr. Jonchuck, correct?
Yes.
Is that schizoaffective?
Yes.
Sustained.
What was your diagnosis?
Initially, because I didn't know him exactly, he was not cooperating much with us, so I believe that I give it an unspecified psychosis.
Okay.
Meaning that I was thinking he was psychotic, but I didn't know why or what kind.
Okay. So, unspecified psychosis basically means I know they're psychotic, but
Sustained.
explain that one more time.
Yeah, unspecified psychotic meaning that when we see the patient or we talk to the patient based on his their behavior, sometimes the speech, and we can assume the patient is psychotic.
Okay.
Why? We don't know. There is a lot of multiple causes of psychosis.
All right.
So until we don't have the definitely, check up, we cannot determine why he is psychotic.
Okay. So, if I understand you correctly, there's different diagnoses that psychosis can be a component of.
Correct.
Okay. And so the undifferentiated means you haven't figured out the rest.
Sustained.
Yes.
Okay.
There are a lot of patients that they have a brain tumor, they become psychotic. And we don't know. So after we remove the brain tumor, the psychosis disappears. So it could be a reason. A lot of patients, they have electrolyte imbalance. The potassium is very low, or sodium is very low, or it's very high.
After the electrolyte imbalance, can you say what you said again?
Well, a lot of patients they have electrolyte imbalance, meaning that sometimes the potassium is very high or it's very low. And
What's very high or low?
Like an example, potassium, or sodium.
Potassium or sodium?
Thank you.
Sorry. And when the patient can present like they are psychotic, and that after you do the blood work, you find out that was the cause and you treat it and the psychosis disappeared. So when we had patients like that, we don't know what's going on, so unspecified psychosis until we found the cause.
Did your diagnosis change over your course of treatment?
It did.
And what did it change to?
A schizoaffective disorder.
Okay.
Yeah.
At one point, were you looking into or ruling out schizophrenia?
At one point, yes.
Okay. What is the difference between schizophrenia and schizoaffective?
Schizoaffective and schizophrenia, both of them fall in the same spectrum, psychotic spectrum.
Okay.
The difference mostly is schizoaffective, they have a mood component, like why the mood is too high, elevated, or too low, very depressed. And in cases, the mood is stable, but the patient is still having hallucinations or delusions.
When Mr. Jonchuck was refusing his medications, did he tell you he didn't need medications?
I recall, yes. He said no. He didn't need it.
He said he didn't need it, right?
Right.
Did you agree with that?
No.
Okay. Do you believe that the state that you saw Mr. Jonchuck in January of 2015, would he have ever changed or improved without medication?
No, not at all.
You said not at all?
Yes.
Am I correct, or how frequently were you seeing Mr. Jonchuck in those first few months he was here?
At least, I would say like 3 or 4 times a week.
Okay, so you had eyes on him fairly regularly?
Yes.
Okay. And for the most part, you said he wouldn't really communicate, but were there times that he talked to you?
Very rarely. After the first day, most of the time he was not. He was angry, probably, threatening to throw me water or juice if I didn't get out, or, you know.
You said he was angry?
And threatening to throw me water.
Throw water on you?
Right.
Gotcha.
I didn't move from myself.
Uh-huh. Is that common with untreated mental illness?
It's very common, yes. They're angry, usually.
Was there some extra agitation that Mr. Jonchuck was dealing with based on where he was housed? Was there a problem inmate that was harassing him?
Well, there was another inmate, kind of the same situation that he was, with the same charges. And the other inmate was blaming him all the time.
So he would kind of taunt him?
Right.
Okay. And did you notice sometimes when you were treating him that Mr. Jonchuck would seem extra agitated based on what the other inmate had been saying to him throughout the day?
Oh, yes.
What?
Jesse.
About January 21st, so a couple weeks after Mr. Jonchuck's been there, were you making rounds with a new nurse? And an interaction with Mr. Jonchuck?
Well, it was a new social worker.
Oh, social
She
worker.
started working with me there, so I was showing her the compound. And so when we stopped in front of his cell, he came to the door, Mr. Jonchuck, said, "Oh, Bernadette, I'm glad that you came to see me."
And so Mr. Jonchuck said, "Hey, Bernadette, I'm glad you came to see me."
Right. And the lady, she didn't say anything, the social worker. So he said, "You remember me? You used to take care of my daughter." And that's it. He said, "Oh, now you don't remember me."
What's her name, Bernadette?
No, her name was Yvette. So I asked him, I asked the social worker, "Is your name Bernadette?" And she said, "No, it's Yvette." "Do you know him?" And she said, "Never seen him."
Did he seem emphatic that this woman used to be his social worker?
Oh, he did, yes.
Did you continue to note throughout the couple months that you had contact with Mr. Jonchuck, or did you continue to observe the unpredictable, disorganized behavior?
Some behavior, yes.
Okay. Did he appear delusional the entire time, or throughout that period of time?
He did.
Did he appear paranoid still?
It's some behavior, yes.
Okay.
Disorganized, unpredictable.
Did you have any reason to believe that this was just drug-induced, that he was just on drugs when he came in?
Initially, because a lot of patients come like that sometimes to the jail and showing that kind of behavior. So it could be drugs induced, especially a stimulant like crystal meth or spice that they're using a lot now, and they behave that way. Well, usually like few weeks later, the psychosis disappear, they improve. In his particular case, it did not improve.
Okay. So if it had been drug-induced, you're saying you would expect to see improvement in a couple weeks?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, and you did not see that improvement in Mr. Jonchuck?
Correct.
Okay, so did you have any reason then to believe that he was under the influence?
I believe he was not.
Okay. Are you aware of what medication is being administered to Mr. Jonchuck today?
Yes.
And what medication is he receiving currently?
He's taking a Haldol, which is an antipsychotic, pills. And he also taking a Haldol decanoate, which is an antipsychotic. Same like a pill, but an injectable. So
like a shot?
Correct, yes. And he's also taking a quetiapine or Seroquel, is the generic name. It's another antipsychotic also. He is also taking Wellbutrin, which is an antidepressant. He's taking the highest doses. And he's taking GABA.
I'm sorry, did you say high doses?
The highest of Wellbutrin, yes.
And I'm sorry, the next one you were saying?
Gabapentin. Again, we use it for, it's an anti-seizures medication, but we use it for anxiety, for the most part, in the psych patients.
And is he receiving Klonopin?
He is on Klonopin also, correct. We use it for agitation and also for the anxiety also.
If Mr. Jonchuck were not on those medications, do you believe he would be exhibiting the same behavior that you've observed this last month or last couple weeks?
Probably not.
Do you believe that he needs to be on that medication?
I believe so.
Can somebody be psychotic and also oriented to person, place, and time?
Definitely.
And you would agree that, or would you, is that common?
It's not so common, but it happens. Some people are just very delusional and they are even functioning, you know. Some people have some belief that is that nobody agree with them, but they believe it. It's considered psychosis, it's delusion.
And people lying about their psychotic symptoms, denying hallucinations or denying delusions, is that common?
It's very common, yes.
May I have a moment, Judge? Nothing further, Judge.
Cross.
Good afternoon, Doctor. You didn't do any testing on the defendant, correct?
No, sir.
And you didn't perform any forensic evaluation on the defendant, correct?
No, sir.
So you're not here to tell us whether he was sane at the time he committed the crime?
Correct.
Because you can't do that.
Right, I'm not a forensic doctor.
And you believe he had some kind of personality disorder?
Initially,
Objection.
Overruled.
when the patient, come to jail, we don't know them. So sometimes we don't know the history, and so it's very difficult for us to tell that they have personality disorders.
But you believe he had one?
I don't believe he does.
What?
I don't believe he does.
You remember giving a deposition back on October 2nd, 2018?
Yes.
Okay. I was present, the defense present, court reporter was present?
Yes.
Yes, I'm getting there. Will be page 34, lines 13 through 15. Can I first finish? Would it help you to refresh your memory if you look at this?
Sure.
Read that?
Yes.
And at that time, have that, please. Or are you finished?
Yes, sir.
At that time, when you were asked, do you believe you had a personality disorder? Do you believe the defendant had a personality disorder at that time?
Improper impeachment.
Overruled.
You said no doubt about it. I think he's always had one. Isn't that what you said then?
I do not recall, sir.
You do not
I
recall?
don't, right.
So, in the deposition, earlier you said he had personality disorder, now you're saying he doesn't. Is that correct?
Well, let me clarify. I don't. Maybe I'm not trying to defend myself. I don't have no need to lie. But there is a lot of things in the deposition. Maybe they did not understand when I was talking that I was correcting when I was reading it. That it didn't match.
You didn't correct that,
But
did you? And there's nothing to correct. I think he always had one. Correct? That's what you said. I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the answer.
I guess it's there.
He never told you he had any hallucinations, did he?
No.
You were not the first person in your staff to see him, were you?
Besides the people in booking, and they go through the process, probably I was the first from mental health to see him. Yes.
Sarah Moss was an LPN?
Yes.
We had to check hearsay.
And Miss Moss saw him at 6:12 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Approach.
you've seen those records?
I believe so.
And were those records that you would review when he was there in 2015?
Yes, apparently that was the first day when he got to.
So these are records that you would have relied upon?
Yes.
What more do we need to talk about? Yeah, I'm waiting. What else is there to talk about? He relied on those records. First day Mr. Jonchuck was there. There's no reason why they wouldn't come in.
Or, I mean, I would ask to inquire
Inquire what?
of, well, one, if Sarah Moss is a medical or psych person.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
This was record, what, I don't know, so in the way the deposition went, Mr. Ellis
It doesn't
started.
matter how the deposition is. He said he relied on those records that were apparently made the first day Mr. Jonchuck came in. It doesn't matter who she is.
Whether he read them and whether he
He said he did.
Right. But reading them and using them to form your diagnosis are two different things.
No. They're coming. He could bring the jury in, please.
Counsel, Deputy Rice, you can line up in a minute. He's in the jury box in his seat, Your Honor.
Doctor, who is Sarah Moss?
She's a LPN,
What does that mean?
licensed nurse practitioner.
And she saw the defendant at 6:12 a.m. on January 8, 2015,
Yes,
according to the notes?
right,
And these are notes that you reviewed and relied upon?
right.
And she indicated that he was alert and oriented times 3. What does that mean?
Well, the main when she asking, like I said, when they come through booking, they get a screen, so they ask all those questions. I mean,
What does times 3 mean?
it mean that he was, he know where he was, he know who he was, and he know the date.
Okay, so date, time, and place, sort of?
Yes.
Then she would have asked him, did he have any command hallucinations to hurt himself or others? And the answer is no. That would have been something she asked him and he replied to?
Yes.
There's a
Objection, speculation.
there's a category that says abnormal behavior, speech, thinking, psychosis, or agitation, and she indicated no. Is that correct?
Yes.
And she's a licensed practical nurse,
Correct.
works at the jail and deals with people who come in all the time.
Yes.
Now, she's not someone who's going to make a diagnosis,
Not for mental health, no.
but she's able to make those observations.
Yes.
And I'm going to be asking about January 8, 2015, 10:19 a.m. records. Seen those records as well. They made an assessment that he had normal speech. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's what I wrote.
And that wouldn't take a psychiatrist or psychologist to make that determination, would it?
It's the pain, you know. The nurses, they are not in mental health. They have different approach sometimes. And for them, sometimes the patient they don't answer, so the patient is fine. You know, I don't know. I was not there at the moment. I don't know the circumstances, but.
And they wrote conscious, alert, not disoriented, and no mental impairment, correct?
That's how they wrote it, yes.
And back to the borderline personality, you indicated in the deposition that it was cluster B. What does that mean?
We have different type of, you know, cluster of personality. Cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. Cluster A is most like people who are very psychotic. Cluster B, mostly like people who have like they could be borderline, they could be antisocial, narcissistic, or histrionic personality. Cluster C is the person who has a dependent personality, passive aggressive. So we usually have like put it, in the cluster. I'm not saying he's a particular, he's antisocial or he's histrionic. I do believe he was in that cluster.
So we did have a personality. You just can't, personality disorder, you just can't say which one in that cluster.
Exactly.
Redirect?
Yes, Judge, may we have a moment?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
Yes. Do you need to show the state where it is?
I'm giving you a copy of the record so you can refer to. I'm going to walk you through and ask you to read a couple things that you relied on. First, I wanted, the state had asked you about Sarah Moss. Is she a psych nurse or medical nurse?
Medical.
All right. Did Mr. Jonchuck deny any mental health history to her?
As per the note, yes.
And at that time, did she indicate Mr. Jonchuck had poor eye contact and a flat affect?
As per the note, yes.
As far as the specific questions that Mr. Ellis was asking you about whether there's command hallucinations to hurt oneself, these are questions that they are supposed to be asked, but whether somebody actually asks the question and gets a verbal answer, fair to say you have no idea.
Right, they are very subjective. I mean, a patient can say no when he is, or sometimes the opposite. They can say yes when they're not.
All right. Looking at January 8th at 10:19 a.m. What did Mr. Jonchuck indicate regarding medication?
I'm sorry, what page?
I'm sorry, January 8th at 10:19 a.m. Segun user.
Yes.
Segun is the last name on the note.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did Mr. Jonchuck indicate about medication?
What I see is the doctor there prescribed metoprolol for the high blood pressure.
And what did Mr. Jonchuck state about that?
They say a history of hypertension and seizures.
Do you have the progress note?
The personal, let's see. I don't have the progress note.
May I approach it?
Nope, totally different. That's weird.
This one maybe?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
The patient refused the metoprolol, which is the medication for the high blood pressure.
And what did he state?
He said, I don't like taking medication because it make me get worse.
So he thought the medication was making him worse?
Yes, that's a statement he made.
All right, then looking at January 8th at 10:54 a.m., Gloria Carpenter, did she make some observations of Mr. Jonchuck?
Patient refused to take his medication for the elevated blood pressure.
Did she make any observations about his appearance?
He said he was sitting on the boat in a single cell, appeared to be apprehensive, looking back and forth to Ryder and the other nurse.
So, I'm sorry?
No.
Oh, I thought I cut you off. So he was looking back and forth between the two doctors that were there?
Two nurses.
And is Gloria Carper that a psych person or a medical person?
Medical.
Okay, and so that was the extent of their observations, that he's looking back and forth, right?
Yes.
Is that an example of something that you would maybe characterize as paranoid?
I would say it's, very ambivalent.
Okay.
They want it, they don't want it. They do that sometimes. They want medication, then they don't want. So they call me, I want it. No, I don't. So.
Looking at January 8th, 5:16 p.m., your note. Did John make some other statements to you other than we talked about John the Baptist and the impotency? Did he indicate, I want to redeem myself?
I'm sorry, that was 5:16?
Yes,
yeah?
sir.
Okay.
What was the quote you have for him there?
I want to redeem myself. My real name is John the Baptist. Even my given name was Jonchuck.
And what did he go on to say about his medication there?
He refused, denied any medical problems. Even the blood pressure was elevated. He was refusing to take it. And he did say, I do not need to take any side meds. They do not work for me. I just need God.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I just need God.
I just need God?
God.
Okay.
Yep.
And so Is that an example of disorganized thinking, saying, I don't have any history of mental illness, or would that be an example of his inconsistencies? I don't have mental illness, but then also talks about why he doesn't take psych meds anymore?
A lot of patients are, when they are very psychotic, they are on denial, delusional denial of illness. They do not believe they need to take any meds.
You said that's common when someone's very psychotic, thinking they don't need meds?
Very common.
Okay. Looking at January 10th of 2015, 2:48 p.m., there's a note by Lauren Matos. Now, Lauren Matos is a licensed mental health counselor, correct?
Pardon?
She's leading.
Is Lauren Matos a licensed mental health counselor?
She was.
So she's one of your people, or
Yeah.
was one of your people.
Right, she doesn't work there anymore, but she used to be.
Okay. And what did she indicate the guards had reported to her on that check?
Man, I'm sorry, I don't know what
I'm
place
sorry.
are you on?
January 10th at 2:48 p.m. About 2 days later.
Okay. Patient was alert, oriented, time 4. He wouldn't talk.
He would not talk?
Right. Would only move his eyes with no questions, no answer to questions. He nodded yes to prior psych meds. He nodded yes to prior arrest. I guess when she was asking, he was. Then he closed his eyes and would not acknowledge the writer anymore. The guards, deputy report the patient having chanting loudly earlier.
So the guards had reported that Mr. Jonchuck was chanting loudly earlier?
As per the notes, yes.
Bless you. Looking at January 14th of 2015, 7:01 p.m. This is your note. Was his behavior still unpredictable and disorganized?
Okay.
I'm sorry, was his behavior still disorganized and unpredictable?
The patient remained showing unpredictable, disorganized behavior, singing at times, threatening writer. Later on, allowed vital signs to be taken and decided to take the pill for the hypertension.
Okay. And the threatening writer, is that one of those things you're talking about, like, get away, I'll throw my water on you or whatever?
Yes.
And he was singing at times? Is that right?
Yes.
And this entire time, Mr. Jonchuck's on suicide watch, right?
He was.
approach judgment. Right, approach petition. Looking at January 15th of 2015 at 3:39 p.m. At that time, was he asked why he won't take his medicine for the hypertension?
Yeah. He said, bring me the whole bottle. I would take it all. Later on, he came to the cell door and saw my badge. And he said,
So what did you say?
The badge. And he said, it doesn't say you are a medical doctor. So I don't know if you are a doctor. I cannot talk to you anymore. My lawyer told me not to talk to anybody. I went back to his bed.
Do you think that meant not to talk to doctors?
Objection, speculation, Judge.
Looking at January 16th at 5:26 p.m.
At that time, he just looked at to the right, and that was me. He looked at the wall, and he didn't talk anymore.
All right. Well, let's look at January 17th, 2015, 10:45 a.m. Now, this user is who? Or the person who input this note?
She used to work also with us. She was a social worker.
That's Christina McCullough, is that right?
Correct.
She's one of your people, mental health people, not medical people, right?
Mental health, yes.
Mental health people. And what did she indicate under chief complaint at that checkup?
You want me to read it?
Yes, sir.
Patient was alert, oriented time 4. He had odd affect, often having a backhand stare, was slow to answer questions, and answers were often vague.
Okay, I'm going to go over that real quick just to make sure everybody understood. Is that okay?
I understand.
Okay. So patient presented as alert and oriented times 4. Is that right?
Yes.
With odd affect, correct?
Yes.
I'm trying to
understand, but
You can't read it and have him
Well-
say yes or no.
Well, he said it. I'm just trying to
Whoa,
break
whoa,
it down
just-
to explain.
Dr. Hernandez.
Yes.
Can you try again to read all that?
To-
Just because you're good when you slow down.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to
thank
try my
you.
best again.
All right.
Chief complaint. Patient presented. He was alert, oriented, time 4. He had an odd affect.
Odd.
Okay.
Okay.
Often having a backhand stare. Was slow to answer questions, and answers were often vague. Per chart review, patient was placed on
What was the first part of that?
chart review.
Oh, okay.
She reviewed the chart. patient was placed on suicidal risk status due to the nature of his charges and unpredictable behavior. Today, patient was cooperatively answering questions for his intake, but seems to have difficulty focusing, and those processes appear to be blocked.
To be what?
Block.
Blocked.
Thought
yes.
processes appeared blocked. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah. He denies suicidal risk.
He denied suicidal risk?
Yes.
Okay.
Stating that the reason he wanted to remain alive was for my child.
I'm sorry, he said the reason I want to remain alive is for my child?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. McCullough, the social worker, asked the patient how many children he had, and he said just one. She asked the patient if he knew where he was and why. He said yes, in jail. He then stared at Ms. McCullough for a long time and said, "Oh my God, this is just so freaking weird. There are too many people coming in here to talk to me." Patient indicated that he would like to talk to the chaplain at that moment.
What is the chaplain?
In the jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she also made some observations about his. So let me ask you this. Actually, let me back up. At that time that he made all those statements, did you indicate that he was alert? She also found that he was alert and oriented times 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Anything inconsistent with that?
No.
Okay. Did she also indicate that he had poor judgment at the time?
Yes, she said judgment is poor.
What about insight?
Insight also was poor too.
And thought processes are blocked. What does that mean?
Block means that, when the normal person, when you talking to somebody, you continue talking. A lot of patients who have a mental illness, mostly like a psychotic disorder, schizophrenia, or that kind, they start talking in the middle of the conversation. You're asking, are you working in any place? And say, yeah, I was working. Then they stop. They don't continue. That's called talk blocking.
And there's sometimes there's pauses in what they're saying, or pauses between a question and their answer.
Right.
Okay. Looking at January 18th of 2017, this is Christina McCullough's note again.
Yes.
And again, Ms. McCullough is a mental health licensed clinical social worker, right?
Correct.
And what did she indicate at that time?
Patient was alert, alert, oriented time 4. He had a flat affect. He smiled and laughed inappropriately during the section.
Oh, and so he smiled and laughed inappropriately throughout the session?
Yes.
Okay.
He stated that he no longer felt like talking with the chaplain. Think this is beyond that, don't you?
This is a quote, right?
Right. That's what he was.
And so read that whole quote, if you will.
He stated he no longer felt like talking to the chaplain. Think this is beyond that, don't you? He asked Miss McCullough. I mean, he told him, when I went to a church to search for answers, and that when all this happened. I spoke to Father Bill, and he tried to take my Bible. He was my stepmother. She told me she thought I need more than that. I need more than that for her.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, finish. I didn't mean to cut you off.
They said they were trying to replace it with a Catholic one. I guess he was talking about the Bible. Patient asked if he could get some clothes and stated, "I'm not suicidal. I do not want to do anything to myself." Then he shared that some guy came into the room last night and told him he was a mermaid. Patient proceeded to giggle and talk to himself while the Miss McCullough was seeing other inmates in the park.
Okay. May I summarize the statement, or may I repeat the statement, Judge? So it's clear.
Did you all hear it?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, did Ms. McCullough also indicate that in the mental status exam, what did she indicate his thought processes were?
She said the patient affect is inappropriate. The mood was euthymic, meaning he was happy. He was cooperative. He maintained the attention. The reasoning was poor. Impulse control was poor. The judgment was poor, and the insight is also poor. Thought process were tangential. Circumstances are concrete. Meaning that, he was talking a lot of different things at the same time. He was not following the conversation. Patient has auditory and visual hallucinations. Thought content reveal paranoia and delusions. The patient did not express suicidal ideation. The patient did not express homicidal ideations.
Can you repeat that one more time, sorry?
The
Just the last part.
did not express homicidal ideation.
May I approach the witness? May I approach the witness, Judge? I didn't give you this one, so I'm going to come up here with you. I'm showing you on January 24th at 2015 at 11:51. This note is from Lauren Matos. Is she one of the mental health people?
She used to be.
Okay.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Patient was alert, oriented time 4. He was lying on the floor by the door. The deputy reported that he was refusing to eat or to drink, and he was not taking a shower for about a week. When he was asked why he was refusing to eat, patient responded, "They told me not to eat." When asked who told him not to eat, he refuses to speak longer. He denied taking any blood pressure medication and stated, "It's not a blood pressure medicine, so I'm not taking it." She wrote a patient was experiencing suicidal thoughts.
Pardon, can you say that again?
He was experiencing suicidal thoughts, but would not go into details on that.
Okay. Do you know who the they was that was telling him not to eat?
No idea.
And then looking at your note on February 3rd, 2015 at 7:44. What did he say then?
Patient was refusing vital signs initially, but later on he allowed 2, and told the deputy, I do not like you because you are a deputy, Deputy Huff, the one who shot my kid.
So let me, if I understand that correctly, you're saying Mr. Jonchuck was referring to a deputy in the jail
Yes,
and said, I don't like you, you're Deputy Huff,
exactly.
the one who shot my kid.
That's all, yes.
Nothing further. Thank you, Doctor.
Can Dr. Hernandez be excused or stand by? Oh, questions? Anybody have a question? Yep. Mr. Miranda, hand that to the deputy, please. Thank you. Can the doctor go over the 2 types of psychotic behavior, question mark, explain and which type John has? I think.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Dr. Hernandez, first question, if you can answer it, can you go over the 2 types of psychotic behavior?
I don't know what you are referring to. I believe you are referring to the personality disorder or not?
Whoa. Mr. Miranda, are you referring to the personality disorder?
Yeah, he was explaining 2 different types.
Of personality disorder?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's all right.
and to go.
Oh, wait. Judge, were you encouraged? Or was it specified, unspecified?
Down. Please sit down. Thank you. Okay. So, does that clarify it, Dr. Hernandez?
Yeah, there is 3 clusters of personality. We have the type A, cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. That's the question you're asking?
No, it was before that. He was only explaining 2 types.
Are you talking about schizophrenia?
Yeah,
Okay.
schizophrenia, he was explaining the 2 different types.
Right. So,
Schizoaffective.
Yeah, yes,
right,
that,
okay.
that, yeah.
Schizoaffective and schizophrenia, both of them are under the umbrella of psychotic disorder. Now, we have a psychotic disorder. We have a brief psychotic disorder, a schizophreniform disorder, a schizophrenia, bipolar disorder with psychotic features, major depressive disorder with psychotic features. So, schizoaffective and schizophrenia, that under that umbrella. If you want to know the definition of schizoaffective, is kind of have the same features of schizophrenia, delusion, hallucinations, and disorganized behavior, disorganized speech. The only difference is that a person with schizoaffective disorder, they have a very strong mood component, like the mood is too high, elevated, or it's too low, very depressed. And schizophrenia, you don't see that.
Okay.
Okay, the next part is explain which type John had.
I believe he have a schizoaffective disorder, and he have been diagnosed with that.
That's the one with the mood.
You're right. High and low.
Okay, anybody, did that answer your question, Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any additional questions of Dr. Hernandez? No? Okay. Should he be on standby or excused? Oh, do any of the lawyers have follow-up questions you would want to ask?
No.
Okay. Can Dr. Hernandez be excused or should he be on standby?
We'd ask him to stay on standby.
Okay, so you're on standby. Thank you for your testimony, Dr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
So
Should I
we're
read
gonna-
those papers?
Yeah.
We're going to take our afternoon break until, we'll take almost 20 minutes till 3:50. Okay, thank you.
Sorry for the hard time.
No problem.
All rise.
Did you know? No, you guys. Yeah, I'll give you a call. Thank you.
You can be seated, folks. Your Honor, jury, out here in the court.
Thank you. Anything we need to discuss?
No.
No?
All rise again.
Yes, ma'am. All right, I want to get,
Let me see if it's back here. Double check.
Okay. No, I got you.
One, 2006, medication wasn't he's reading, self-reported, and what he's really, I'm looking at it. Sorry.
No,
I
you're
didn't
good.
want you to interrupt.
No, I can get a.
Just not reading that, so we're exactly until like 10:02.
That's all. Thank you.
I have to take a picture of the medications you can listing, I just had to list some of them. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You're still slimming down.
They actually make sauna shirts.
I'm not a big fan.
They make compression sauna shirts, which are neoprene, which is basically a scuba diving thing.
Hydrate, yeah. Here's a diabetic. She's unfortunate.
Is there some place in the that we're working on this? Obviously didn't say that, but like, I don't know what he did say, you know?
Oh, well.
I will find.
Well, if you find it, I know you got those
Before
in
we
place,
break
so
down,
I got a lot of stuff going on.
They're very clear on what's real school. Even most doctors are like, what's an overflow? Eat overflow. If you Google it, you say an overflow, it'll bring it up. That's a
Don't let me leave, I'll try to find it.
No, go on your break. I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
What's your 17?
No, I just wanted to.
That's okay.
Side effects, side effects. It's, how long we got it? Another subject. You know. Speaking of which, talking about more than half a gallon of water. I think for this, we're doing the full. Yeah, we're doing whole morning.
I've seen you at, I know.
How's the dogs doing?
Great. Where you been? Oh, really?
Some felony, some misdemeanor. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. I know.
I've been here for a while. So.
I saw you on the news the other day.
Oh, you did? Oh, Lord.
Your hair was perfect.
I thought they would have gave you some help. You over here for what?
They don't want to switch clerks out of trials like this.
Well, I thought it would
She's
have
coming back on.
two clerks that go in the same.
She's coming back on.
Did she say what my break's still?
Because of the volume of evidence.
It's not that much.
Oh, okay. That car looks pretty big to me.
At 350, that's their truck stuff. That's not that much. That's not mine.
Oh.
And then if I bring it back tomorrow, I'll bring it back tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Any guess what time you think we're gonna stop tonight? 5-ish? Kind of seems.
As soon as I say that yes, then it'll be 8. So.
Right.
I think so. I don't know how long Dr. Williams and Heather are going to take. We're trying to get them on since they drove down from Gainesville.
Oh, so you still have 2 more lined up?
We technically have 3, but I don't know if we'll get to the 3rd. That's what I was gonna
Trying to catch the Rays game or something?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how much more caffeine I need.
I had 2 glasses of coffee this morning. I got the shakes so bad. Then I started feeling sick. So I don't think I'll do that again.
Back when I worked at Taco Bell, this girl I worked with took caffeine pills. And
I
she
know.
would take, I don't know how she did it. I took one once and I was having a heart attack. And she would take like 3 or 4 days.
Oh.
I just started drinking coffee maybe within the last 4 months.
Yeah.
And it's just, it did not sit with me good at all. I like shoved food in my throat. So I was getting the shake so bad.
Yeah, it's not good coffee.
Want a pretzel?
What's that?
Pretzel?
No, I'm good. Yeah, if I didn't have breakfast and coffee, then it would upset.
That's what it did.